Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to make this simple icon illustration with the football team, and someone requested this in the comments and they mentioned that they were asking for this for about 3 years, so I really wanted to show some appreciation that some of you are staying around here for so long. So I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the most effective way, be sure to check out my courses too. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through local illustrations all the way to full character illustration and textured environment. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all let's just select everything here, press X and delete, and now we'll press Shift A and start with the plane, and now tab into the edit mode and press S then X to scale this up on X-axis, so we have a rectangular shape. And now we kind of need to define the football pitch lines. Again, this will be very stylized, so we'll actually carve them out of the surface. They won't be like texture or they won't be painted. They will be a real 3D object. And since the football pitch is basically symmetrical on both axes, we can use mirror modifier here. So let's press Ctrl R and create one loop cut here, right click to release in place, and one on the y-axis. And now we can just delete everything here, press X and delete vertices, and we can go to the modifiers panel and add mirror modifier and enable both X and Y axis. And now we can just cut into this. So let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad and press K for a knife tool and just snap it somewhere here, and we'll create the first set of lines. So we can press A to lock the angle, and let's create something like this and just connect it here. And now when you're finished, press enter on the keyboard to confirm the cut. And then we'll need to have like a circular shape here, but first I want to create some additional vertices. So let's select these two right here, right click and subdivide, and let's do the same thing over here, right click and subdivide. And we can now just select this in the middle, press X and delete vertices. And now we'll just select this one, press G then X, move it aside, we'll snap it later. And let's do the same thing here. And now we'll press Shift A and insert a circle. We are still staying in the edit mode of this object, so this will be a part of that original plane object. And let's now go here and change this to something like 16 vertices. And press S to scale it down, and let's create something like this. And again, this is very stylized. I know the proportions aren't right, but that's not the point here. And now we'll kind of create faces where we need them. So first of all, let's go and enable auto merge vertices, and let's go here and enable vertex snapping. Now select this vertex, press G and hold Ctrl and snap it right here. That will connect it and it will merge because we have the auto merge on. And let's do the same thing here. So press G, hold Ctrl and snap it right here. And now we can just go ahead and delete these vertices right here. So press X and delete, and this set on the left side as well. So we end up only with this, and now we need one in the middle. Probably I shouldn't have deleted that in the first place, but it's easy. We can just select any vertex, press Shift D and duplicate it somewhere, and then hold Shift S and snap selection to cursor, since the cursor is in the middle, and we now have the vertex there. And now let's hold Shift and select these additional ones and press F to fill. That will create a face here and complete using the mirror modifier. And now we'll select this vertex right there, hold Ctrl, click here, so we are selecting this loop, and now hold Shift and select these additional vertices. We'll create an angle here, so press F to fill. So now this is still a rectangle, but we have the lines we need. So let's go back to the edit mode, let's look from the top, and we can create the bevel, but first I want to create a little curvature here. So let's select this vertex, press Ctrl B, then V to enable vertex bevel, and insert like 2 levels of bevel using the mouse wheel. So let's do something like this. And now we can alt click this loop right here and hold Alt and Shift and select this one as well, and press Ctrl B to bevel this and reduce back to only one segment, and we can do bevel, and we can go quite large here. Again, I want this to be very visible, very stylized. This will be like an icon representation of the football pitch, so I think something like this should work. And now here we'll only create one cut, so press K. The Ctrl R won't work because we have a bad geometry here, so let's just click here, press A to lock the angle and connect it right here, and let's hit enter. And now the line will be double of this. So we kind of need to figure out the width based off this line, and I think this is almost there. We can press G twice and slide it a little bit towards the middle, but this should do just fine. And now the final thing, let's select this vertex, press Ctrl B, then V, and create the vertex bevel here. I want this to be nice and rounded. We can eventually even connect this, but maybe that won't be necessary. Let's create something like this. Make sure you leave a space here because the bevel modifier will need that. And now let's press 3 for face select, alt click this loop right here, hold alt and shift, and add these other loops to the selection. And now before I separate this, let's make sure we have clipping in the mirror modifier, because then when you extrude this, it would create like these inside faces, which we don't want. So make sure the clipping is on, and press P and separate the selection. And now before we move on, let's add some more geometry, because later I want to add subdivision modifier. So we'll probably need at least some connections right here. So let's press 1 for vertex select, and we can do this with the knife tool. So press K and just create a cut like this. We can help by pressing A and locking in the angle. And this is just to have some more geometry for the subdivision modifier. So let's create one right here. Let's lock it with A, and maybe here as well. And I think this won't hurt. And let's do one here. I don't mind the add-ons. This is quite okay. Only if this piece was too large, the subdivision modifier would go crazy over that. So let's just press A now and extrude this down like this. And now press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate the normals. Now we can tab out, select the lines, tab into the edit mode, press A and extrude it down like this. And again, press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate normals. Now we'll tab out of the edit mode, and in the object mode, let's add another modifier, and that will be the bevel modifier. And let's reduce the amount, and let's increase to something like 2 segments. And down here in the geometry, we'll switch the miter to arc. They'll create some better corners for us, especially for this other object. So I think this will work fine. So let's select the other one, hold shift, select the lines, and now just click this arrow and copy to select it, so that will transfer the modifier. And now with both of these selected, we can press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface modifier, and you have a nice smooth object. Sometimes the bevel angle might not be enough, so while these two are still selected, let's make sure we increase the angle to at least like 45 degrees, because I can clearly see this is some unnecessary bevel down here. So let's do 45, and before I hit enter, I will hold Alt key and confirm, and that will ultimately transfer the same number for both modifiers. So this is much better now. And make sure we are shading this smooth. And if you don't like the smoothness, you can always go like 3 levels of subdivision if you want, but I think 2 levels should be enough for most cases. Now let's select this object right here, tab into the edit mode, and we'll separate some geometry and reuse it. So let's go ahead and select this face right here, hold Control and click here, Shift D to duplicate, right click to release in place. This didn't get merged yet after the duplication, but just in case, let's disable the auto merge for the future. And now let's press P and separate this into a new object. Now we can tab out, select that new object, and you can see all the modifiers are inherited by this new object. So this will save us a lot of work, and we are spared of adding these modifiers over and over. So that's why I like to reuse a lot of stuff. Now let's press 1 for vertex select, select these two, press G then X, and move it here until it connects. And let's do the same thing here. Now we can select all by pressing A, Alt E and extrude along normals. Press S for even scaling. And now we can press 3 for face select, Alt click the top loop and just bring it up a little bit. And we can make it a little bit more chunky since this should be an icon. So maybe we can even expand this with Alt S outside a little bit more. And now basically it's all about like creating little details that will make up the whole thing. So let's tab out, let's select the speech and tap into the edit mode. Press 2 for edge select and we'll select this edge, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it so we can better place our new object. Tab out, let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Tab into the edit mode and press S to scale it down. Now tab out, press G, then X, move it closer here. Tab into the edit mode, press S then Y and scale it up like this and E to extrude. So something like this should be fine. And now select the back edge, press G, then X and move it closer. And now we can press Ctrl B and create a bevel like this. And now just select this edge right there, press P and enter to separate that selection to a new object. You can see it right here in the outliner. And now with the edge select still active, select this piece of edge right here, hold Ctrl and click there, hold Shift, click on the other side and hold Ctrl again to select part of the loop, press P and separate the selection. And now we'll select the front, so these three right there, P and separate. So now we can tab out and basically just select the original object, press X and delete because the frame is what we are interested in. Just here I want to create a little bevel, so tab into the edit mode, press 1, select these two vertices by holding Shift and then press Ctrl B then V to create that bevel, and we'll need to move things around a little bit to make this work. So let's look from the back by pressing 3 on a numpad and basically just select these, press G then Z and move it up like that. And now select the whole thing on one side, press G then Y and move it like this, and on the other side as well. If you want this to be symmetrical, you can always use the mirror modifier, but I think this will be a little bit more simple. Now we can tab out, select everything here, and with the front piece selected, press Ctrl J to join, right click and convert to curve. The reason why I separated them first and only then converted to curve is because I want these to be disconnected right here, because if they were connected, that would create really weird corners with the curve. So let's go to the curve settings, and in the geometry section, let's apply some bevel like this. And then we can tab back in, select this control point, press L to select linked, and press Alt S to scale this up somewhat like this, so it's a little bit like more pronounced in the front. And now we can tab out, press Ctrl 1 to add some level of subdivision, right click and shade smooth, and this should work just nicely, and press G then Z and move it down a little bit. Now we can go to the modifiers panel and add mirror modifier and use the eyedropper tool to change the center of the mirroring. So we have something like that here. And now we can create a little tribune. So select this part, tab into the edit mode, go for edge select by pressing 2, select this edge on the bottom, or you can select the whole thing here as a face, press Shift D to duplicate and P, enter to separate, tab out and select that new object. Now we can select these, press G then X and move them a little bit closer. Now press A and extrude. I want this to go a little bit outside. And now let's go back for face select by pressing 3, select the top face, and let's do extrude a little bit. Now we'll extrude towards the front like this. And now let's just go for edge select by pressing 2, select this edge and move it back a little bit. So press G then Y and move it somewhere here. So now we can create a new cut right here, and it should be like approximately 3 equal parts. So press 3 for face select and extrude these two, and then the last one right here. And you can see already there is a bevel, there is subdivision, so we have a nice smooth object. And we can additionally only play with the amount here. Let's make it a little bit larger, and here as well, so it's like more chunky here, something like this. And now let's select the stairs, tab in, and we can just hold shift, select these other faces, press shift D, right click to release, and P enter to separate. And again, I'm reusing a lot of geometry. And now if you select all in the edit mode and extrude, the bevel modifier will kick in and you have a nice smooth object right away. Now I want just to move these things towards the front a little bit and this to the side, all like this. So very stylized version of a pitch. And now let's find the corner. So select this object, tab into the edit mode, and we can select this edge. So 2 for edge select, hold shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now we can tab out and we can press shift A, add a plane. Now tab into the edit mode and press M and merge at center. That will create one vertex right here. Go to the vertex select the one, press E, then Z to extrude, like this, not so high maybe. Tab out, right click and convert to curve. And again, in the geometry section, we can add some bevel geometry like this. And now we can tab into the edit mode, select the top control point, hold shift S and snap cursor to select it, so it's easier to create a new object there. Now tab out, let's press shift A and we'll add a plane. Tab into the edit mode, press R, then Y and 90 to rotate 90 degrees. Let's confirm, and press G, then Z and 1. So we know that this is 2 meters, so we need to move it 1. So the origin point sits down there at the bottom. And now let's select top vertices, press G, then Z, move them down slightly so it's more rectangular. And now we can tab out and just scale it according to the origin point, like this. Don't forget to press Ctrl A and apply that scale. And now back to the edit mode, press A and press Ctrl B, then V to create some bevels. Press A, G, then X to move it towards the front a little bit, and then E to extrude. And now we can go for face select the front face, hold shift S, snap cursor to select it, tab out, and let's press shift A and we'll add a circle and we'll create these lights. So tab into the edit mode, press 1 for vertex select so we better see what the geometry looks like, and just scale it down, press R, then Y and 90 degrees. And we can look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad. And then if you want to rotate, you can press 9 to rotate to the other side. And now we can just tab out and press G and move it to the side. And Alt D to create a link duplicate. Press Y to lock it and just move it somewhere here. And then Shift R to replicate. And now we can select both of those by holding Shift, press Alt D and Z to duplicate them towards the bottom. Now again, by holding shift, we'll select the others and press G to place them a little bit better, so it's better centered. And now we can just select one of them and finish the modeling. So tab into the edit mode, press E, then X to extrude, F to fill and I to inset, and press G then X to move it out a little bit. And now we can tab out, select all of them and press Ctrl 1 to create subdivision, right click and shade smooth. And now select the box, hold shift, and for example select this object right here. So we'll just go ahead and copy the bevel modifier here as well. Now select it, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision, right click, shade smooth. And now go back to the edit mode and we'll create a little detail. So 3 for face select the back face, press shift D to duplicate, and X and just move it really slightly so it doesn't overlap, and then E to extrude, so we have some interesting detail there. And now basically we can join these with the rest of the object. So hold shift, select it, press Ctrl J to join, and we have a single object that we can rotate around. So let's press R, then Y and tilt it a little bit, and then press R, then Z and 45 degrees minus. And now we can go ahead and add mirror modifier. Let's pick the pitch as the center of mirroring, and let's enable Y as well. And now we'll do the same here, but first let's right click, shade smooth the pole, and let's create the same kind of mirror modifier down there like this. And finally let's hold shift S, snap cursor to world origin, let's press shift A and we'll add a plane. Now let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, press G then Y, move it here. Now R, then X, 90, and let's press G, then Z and move it up. And tab in and press S, then Z to scale it on Z axis like this. And then we can adjust the overall shape by pressing S, tab out and move it a little bit higher. So this will be our board. So tab back in, press Ctrl B then V to create the same kind of bevel, and we can press A and extrude. Now let's select the front face again, and we'll press Shift D to duplicate, right click to release in place, and we can create a really small gap. So press G then Y, and by holding Shift move it very slightly so it barely moves, and then press I to create an inset, press X, delete the inner face, alt click the outer loop and press E to extrude. Now we can tab out and just copy the modifier stack from here, so hold Shift and copy to select it, and now just select it, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision, right click and shade smooth. So that'll be the board, and now let's enter some text there. So with the object selected, let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. That should be placed properly, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a text object right here. Now let's just press R then X and 90 to rotate, and in the text settings let's center this both vertically and horizontally. Now let's make this smaller, and for the font I like to go impact. There's like a technical typeface, so something like impact. Now we can tab in, just delete, and let's enter some kind of score. Now we can just scale it up, and in the geometry settings we can just extrude this and leave it like this. No need to do anything else here. Now I think this looks just fine, so final touch, let's hold Shift S, snap cursor to world origin, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now scale it up quite large, and let's look from the front by pressing 1, and here with the vertex snapping still active we can press G then Z and hold Ctrl until it snaps on some of these bottom vertices, so it will sit perfectly on the bottom there. Now let's enter some camera, so let's press Shift A and create a camera. If you create camera like this it will be tilted, so press Alt R to reset the rotation, press G then Z, move it up like this, and now hold period on a keyboard and switch the pivot to 3D cursor. You can do it here as well if you want, and now press R then X and just rotate it around the middle. And now if you press 0 on a numpad you will see through the camera, and if you want to go further away press G and Z twice to move it alongside its local Z axis. Now let's go ahead and switch the resolution in the output settings so we see more of the scene, and press G then Z and move it up slightly like this. And now for the render preview we'll press Ctrl B and limit the render preview only for the camera bounce. And in the render settings let's switch to cycles. I will enable GPU and denoising both for viewport and render preview, and something like 512 samples. And right now we can hold Z and preview the rendered scene. Of course it's a little bit too dark, so we can press Shift A and add a light, and let's add area light, press G then Z and move it up. And now we can go to the light settings, make it circular and make it larger so the shadows are more soft, and let's try something like 150 to create a nice soft overlight for an icon like this. Now this will need also a little bit of a dramatic light as well, so let's press Shift A, add another one, press G then Z, move it up, and now I will switch this to disk as well. But now I will use that cursor pivot point, press R then X and 45 minus, so it's tilted towards the back, and press G then Z twice to move it back slightly, maybe even down like this. So we get really shallow light, but it's smaller source of light, so we get some better defined shadows here. And now we can go something like 150 as well here, maybe make it a little bit larger. I don't like this too sharp, and I think this is too strong, so let's just move it on the y-axis so it only kind of serves as the background light. And now we can switch back to the medium point by using the period on the keyboard, so we don't get too harsh transition right here. So something like this. Okay, and maybe this can be a little bit stronger, something like 300. And this really depends on the size of your scene. So if you made your proportions larger, if this is larger than say the 4 meters we have here approximately, you would need stronger lights, of course. Okay, so now let's select the background and create some material, and this will be like a bluish violet material right here. And let's increase the roughness so it's not that glossy. And now for the lines, this will be very simple. Let's create the white material, and for the pitch, of course, we'll go some nice green color. Don't need to be so vibrant. We'll do a little trick that will make this icon pop out a little bit more color wise. So let's leave it like this for now. And let's add some more geometry. I would like to see some kind of frame here as well. So tab into the edit mode, alt click the loop around, and I will just duplicate this and basically extrude along normals. So we have some more geometry happening here, because here I want to use like a really simple gray bluish tone, and here I want to use some stronger accents, so something like a strong orange or red color. We'll see how this works. And I want to use this accent throughout, and I want to make this a little bit more glossy, so let's reduce the roughness. And let's use it here as well, and here on the frame. So the board can be something dark, but let's keep to a blue tones. So let's create like a really dark bluish color, and maybe we can make it a little bit more glossy. And now tab in, we can press L, hovering over the front part to select it, and let's create a new material slot. Let's select the orange one and click assign. And now for the numbers, we can switch the principal to emission and go something like 10, and maybe give this like a blue tone so it looks a little bit more futuristic. And now for these boxes, let's go the same dark material, but I want to make the composition a little bit lighter. So let's hover here, press L, and we'll add a white material here for the backs. And for the front parts, of course, let's select part of them, press L, and just hovering over these, by pressing L, we can add to the selection. Now create a new material slot. We can create a new light, switch to emission and do something like 10, and click assign. I don't want this to be too strong, so you can see it affects the lighting quite a lot. So let's reduce this to something like 4, maybe even 3. So, and maybe a little bit warmer tone. Okay, and let's make this dark. And here we can use that grayish tone that we created. And for the poles as well. Okay, so now these are the basic materials, and to make this look a little bit better, we have these lights here, and we would kind of expect that these lights affect our football pitch quite a lot. But if you actually increase to something strong, it will just fill the scene with these lights, and it feels like a flat and uninteresting. And we already got from these lights what we want. We got these reflections on the glossy materials. So we can affect the football pitch in other way by manually placing some kind of light that doesn't really make sense in reality, but here it will help us to make a better icon. So let's press Shift A, and we'll add an area light, press G, then Z to move it up. And of course, let's switch this to disk. And let's keep it really close, and we can make it smaller. So the goal here is to create this kind of gradient towards the middle, and let's make this a little bit stronger, something like 25 or so, and maybe give this a little bit different tone. So now you can really see the gradient. You can see this like a uninteresting green towards the corners, but here in the middle it has this radial gradient feeling. And if you zoom out now, this illustration pops up much better. And now in the world settings, we can give this some bluish tone as well, maybe increase the strength so we get much like softer and brighter shadows. And depending how much you want to influence the colors and blend these colors together, you can go like more saturation or less. And then in the render settings, we'll finalize things in the color management by picking higher contrast setting and playing with the exposure. So maybe even something like high contrast. I think that's too much, so medium high is quite okay. and maybe we can make the background a tad darker. Okay, so that's it for the football pitch icon illustration. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, please don't forget to leave that like, and if you're new around here and you want to see more, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.